Days after the Union Army's stunning defeat at First Bull Run, a dark-haired, stocky man from Beloit, Wisconsin, was given command of the shattered 2nd Wisconsin Infantry. His name was Edgar O'Connor. A graduate of West Point, O'Connor's reputation was already complicated. He had spoken publicly that Union volunteers needed more training before battle, a remark that raised questions about his loyalty. To make matters worse, a lingering bronchial illness forced him to give orders in a whisper, relayed through an aide. On the night before battle, he may have asked himself, "Will I be an example to my soldiers? Will I be steady? Will I show the folks back home I am not a traitor?" The morning came hot and humid. General John Gibbon's brigade, 4 regiments from Wisconsin and Indiana, marched east, past the hallowed ground of Bull Run. Veterans of the 2nd Wisconsin told the stories of their first disastrous battle to their untested comrades. The men of the 2nd were now to have the chance of showing the hallowed ground to their still untried comrades. For a year they had told and retold the story of that terrible July day in 1861. Now they walked the very fields where they had fought and where they had retreated. Perhaps they hoped their tales would end at Henry House Hill, avoiding the painful memory of their flight from the battlefield. To their north, behind a ridge, Stonewall Jackson's men lay hidden. As the Union Brigade approached John C. Brawner's 300-acre farm, Jackson ordered his soldiers to their feet. The stirring picture of the Confederate advance was not visible to Gibbon or his men. The ground looked peaceful, unremarkable to a prairie farmer's eye. One soldier thought the stillness reminded him of home. Then the quiet was shattered. Gibbon ordered Battery B forward. Shells screamed overhead. The 2nd Wisconsin was told to silence the Confederate battery. Once again, the men in the black hats would lead the way. They advanced under heavy fire, Major Thomas Allen remembered. The fire was terrific. Bullets came thicker than rain. It seemed as if our whole regiment must soon be annihilated. With just 450 men, the 2nd Wisconsin stood alone against thousands. O'Connor whispered his orders. "Hold steady." The men knelt in the open field, defiant, unyielding. To the amazement of the Confederate leaders, the black hats knelt in their tracks as though bidding them to come on. They opened fire. The fight raged back and forth for hours. Smoke filled the fields. One Wisconsin soldier shouted through the din, "Come on, goddamn you!" Then Colonel Edgar O'Connor reeled in his saddle and fell, mortally wounded. As his men carried him from the field, he whispered, "Do your duty." Command passed to Lucius Fairchild, who told the men to stand firm, to keep their honor. 7 of the 8 members of the color guard were killed or wounded. 18-year-old Private Frank Cole was struck down, surrounded by the rifles he had fired in defiance. The ground grew so covered with the dead and dying that survivors had to step carefully, not to tread upon their comrades. At times, the fighting was so close that men fought hand to hand, but the black hats would not yield. They stood their ground with bulldog determination. When darkness finally ended the fighting, the 2nd Wisconsin had suffered the highest loss in the brigade. Of 430 men, 276 were killed or wounded, a casualty rate of 65%. One soldier described this aftermath, that the regiment is all cut to pieces. Lieutenant Colonel Fairchild, choking back tears, looked at the thin line of survivors. One corporal, searching for the dead, remembered, "We found all our dead and wounded along a line a rod or 2 wide." To find out the condition of their colonel, who was shot from his horse, the soldiers received stunning news. Edgar O'Connor was dead. The 2nd would pick up the pieces of their battered and bloodied regiment. At Brawner's farm, the 2nd Wisconsin was bloodied, but unbroken. In their baptism of fire, they had shown their untested comrades what it meant to fight with tenacity, toughness, and honor.